I did see Indira in the panel, and I grew nervous because, introducing her, I don't know if I'm the right person, but I've been told to introduce, and I got very excited about it. So I extend a very warm welcome, Dr. Indira Parikh, on behalf of the entire ISAPS fraternity. It's really an honor for us to have you with us. And also, as I said earlier, I think we welcome you back home, and I'm glad you could come. I do have, toughest job to introduce Dr. Indira Parikh because I feel that she doesn't need one, because she's so well known, nobody needs to know, and nobody, I need not introduce her, but therefore, I also felt, okay, it's definitely an honor for me to be speaking about her and welcoming her into this summit. When I was reading through Dr. Indira Parikh's profile, it ran into pages. And I said, my God, now if I have to introduce her, it's going to take one full day maybe. Then I was saying, how do I really make it a little shorter and then convey what I want to convey about her for members who are present here? But it was very hard. However, I tried to make it simple and captured some significant, milestones about her work experience, education, awards, books, papers, articles. I'm sure that I've not done full justice, ma'am, to introduce you, but I've attempted to share a few thoughts about your profile. Dr. Indira Parikh holds M.Ed from University of Rochester, USA, and she has also done a PhD from Gujarat University. She holds BA in Social Studies, University of Rochester, and she has done innumerous other training experience, internship group work, counseling, psychometric assessment, and managerial and organizational assessment tools. Many things to her credit. She's the former founder, president of FLAME Institute, which is called Foundation for Liberal and Management Education. Prior to this role, she has played various roles. She's been Dean of IIM Ahmedabad, faculty member at IIM Ahmedabad for over 30 years. She has also taught in INSEAD, Texas AM University. She's been a consultant to various national and global organizations, both in private and public sectors. She's also on the board of several companies. She's also known for organization design and development exemplary. She's also held many professional positions. I'm just naming a few. I know that I'm still not going to fully justify what I'm going to say. The first thing which I'm very proud is she's been the Dean of ISAPS many, many years back in 70s. It's the foundation years of ISAPS, and I think, ma'am, you have really contributed a lot to ISAPS in the early years, and we are really thankful to you. So we are proud. She's the founder of Sumaidas. She's been executive director of ISISD, Indian Society for Individual and Social Development. She has held many other academic positions as chairperson, member of research and publications, and alumni of many prestigious institutions. Everywhere she has worked, one thing what I've really read and understood is that she has left behind a very remarkable footprints in every academic positions she has held. I think it's really an honor to know you, ma'am. She has further played key roles in academic positions, president of Antardisha, Dean of Indian Institute of Management, and visiting research scholar in European Institutes of Business Administration. She's been associated with resource associate for IIM Ahmedabad for many, many years. There's a saying, one's work should speak for itself. I think the saying undoubtedly speaks volumes of you, ma'am, in my understanding, as she is the recipient of plethora of awards, recognitions from institutions ranging from education, human resource departments, leadership organizations, and B schools. She's been awarded exemplary and leader and visionary awards are extraordinary to her credit. Some of the awards and achievements she has received: Outstanding Women Leadership Achievement Award, Award for Outstanding Contribution to Education, Asian Leadership Awards, Dubai, Life Achievement Award, National HRD Network, National Education Leadership Hall of Fame Award, Legendary Contribution to Education, Pan Pacific, Singapore, Inspirational Leader Award by the World Education. I'm just telling you, this is just a few things I've picked up, but then the list goes on and on. So I'm really recommending each one of you to go read her profile to really understand the kind of achievements ma'am has got. She's playing key role at present in many universities, like government body and other institutions as advisory and academic boards. Just to name a few, she's part of the State Knowledge Advisory Board, Government of Andhra Pradesh, IIT Hyderabad, Mercedes-Benz Education Academic Committee. Dr. Indira Parikh, on her own, as well as along with Pulin Garg, has written many books, articles and papers. I've just picked up 3 books to share with all of you. Books, she has written Crossroads of Culture, a study in the culture of trans science, way back in 95. Indian Women Inner Dialogue in 1989. Young Managers at the Crossroads, 1993. Dr. Indira Parikh has also written on workers and management, social historical perspective management and labor studies. Along with Dr. Pulin Garg, she has written on values, design and development of strategic organization, and goes on and on. So I'm going to stop here because I wish to listen to ma'am than talking about more and more about her. With all this, I once again feel very honored, ma'am, to have you part of our ABS Summit. I now invite you to please give us a keynote address on the subject, topic, emergence and future of ABS. Thank you, ma'am. Welcome. You're on mute, ma'am.
I'm not so techno-savvy. Thank you. Thank you for the generous introduction, Joy. I'm really honored and privileged to be invited to speak today. It took me back literally 50 years, and it just talks of our ages when we talk of 50 years. I was there in the first meeting of when all the names you kind of listed were present, and I was there as a research associate, just beginning my career. I think I had just joined the institute as a research associate and was very much interested in learning further. So I was there. And I looked at the kind of discussions which were going on, and I saw the birth taking place of an institution which I now see has is crossing 50 years. I remember the discussions of all the people sharing their thoughts of what should be done, what we should be doing, and how the institution should be set up. And very quickly, people took roles and responsibilities of what needed to be done. And the first program of ISABS, where I was the first intern of 6 interns in Gulmarg. And I remember that experience very vividly because it was a tough experience. But I was the only woman, and there were 5 male participants, all from big organizations and big positions. And I was kind of a small research associate struggling to do something with her life. And I remember the 15 days we were there, the first 15 days were the toughest of my life, because the focus was still on, because the women that 50 years ago, not so much into professions or professional working. So they were all telling me, including 4 Maharati faculties, Dharni Sinha, Dawn Bilby, there were 4 faculty for 6 of us, all telling me I should be home looking after my child and not really getting into this kind of work. And I was so determined that I was not going to let them have their way. So I kind of stood my ground firm. And on the last day, I just could not take it. So I really hit out at everybody. And all 10 of us, 6 of us and 4 faculty were all in tears. And they're saying, we didn't understand what you were saying. But finally, I did my second phase and then my third phase in ISAB. So I'm very grateful for my association. And of course, when the time came, I said I became the dean, but did not do any work. So you thanked me for the work. But then on that same year, after the elections took place, the breakup took place. So I wasn't even there, and I was put into the list of another group for which formed ISISD later on. But besides whatever happened institutionally, the fact that my basic grounding of process work formally, professionally is with ISABs. And applied behavioral science was an issue which everybody was grappling with at that time. And now the word has come to stay, especially dealing with the culture. So once again, namaste everybody. I'm really honored and extra privileged to be speaking on this event of the 50th birthday, so to say. And I was really touched by the invocation which was done and the prayers and the celebrations for everybody. I think that's a very, very positive aspect. And it reflects the third theme of the summit, continuity in change and honoring the ancient to contemporary spiritual practices. It kind of touched that theme, so I'm quite... So let me begin. When I was kind of thinking of this theme, I said emergence. Emergence is what to what, because emergence means present, here and now. And it is... And it has to be from where to where and what to what. And these themes are so relevant, and that I'm very much kind of impressed with the third theme, because the third theme seems to give the answers to the first 2 issues raised in the summit. See, our country is an ancient civilization. And what has been now told that it has existed for 70,000 years. And the first theme, beyond barriers, co-creating in complexity and diversity. Let me address that theme first. Because we understand, Indians understand complexity and adversity very easily. Because we have so many cultures and so many institutions assimilated by us, that for thousands of years we have been attacked, invaded, colonized, etc. That we seem to, and at different contexts and different centuries, that so many visitors have come, some to stay, some to plunder, some to loot, some to destroy the heritage, but the complexity is in layers of our culture, and we seem to understand it very easily because it has been our experience. Now, philosophers and researchers from the West have given it a meaning that our culture is very complex and very contradictory, but it doesn't seem so to us. We seem to flow with the complexity and adversity simply because it is part of a larger whole, and the fabric and the adversities are merely motives in the larger fabric of our society. So, and then, see, when we seek the answers of what is, how do we exist in both, we seem to have the answers in our spiritual texts. But we have an amnesia of almost 500 years of our cultural heritage. and we do not remember. And in that amnesia, a lot of things have been stuffed into us by the colonizers, whom we kind of, because 500 years is a long time to be, and amnesia is not such a very easy thing to live with. But in the amnesia part, a lot of things have gone into us, which we seem to carry. So if the Westerners think this is a contradiction and it's a complex society and full of contradictions, it seems to them, but it doesn't seem to us, because we kind of flow with the centuries and maybe hundreds of years of our experience and our cultural heritage, and the complexities in layers of centuries. But we seem to have absorbed and assimilated, which is the strength of the country. So we can really go beyond barriers and accept the adversity as part of the living reality without feeling that this is difficult to understand or difficult to explore. When we look at the first theme of beyond barriers and creating complexity and adversity, we tend to ask ourselves, what is the, we tend to ask ourselves, what is it in our mind that we can go beyond? Because since we tend to absorb and assimilate everything, it becomes part of us, and therefore it is not so difficult to accept the contradictions or the complexities for us to manage or even accept. See, if we look at this with a logical mind, it is difficult to understand and even difficult to comprehend. But if we look at it with our experiential mind and our spirituality, it is very much easy, and the philosophical approach, which is for us very easy to understand this, and also how to go beyond the barriers. The barriers have come because of the dilemma between the logical and the rational, and the experiential and the emotional. Because what happens is, experientially it makes sense to us, but logically it does not make sense to many. And therefore there is a dilemma. And this dilemma can only we can go beyond it by putting it in a much larger context and understanding that it is not just the event per se or the issue per se, but it is the ongoing history of a culture and a society which has been so brutally damaged and disturbed that it becomes kind of fragmented. So we have to see it more in the larger context of layers of centuries and layers of assimilations that has happened in the country. And that is really our strength. And that is what we say, we need to accept everybody as is and not start imposing that it should be, or put it in a comparative frame. If you put it in a comparative frame, some will come out to be less and some will come out to be more. And we don't have to put it in a comparative frame. We have to say both are as is and existing as is. And they have their strengths, they have their limitations. And how do we kind of coexist in both of these without judgments, without evaluations, or without comparative approach? Now we have made it into a flow, and as such for us there are no barriers. See, even if we see it as barriers, we have to ask ourselves, why do we see it as barriers? Because we see it as with our colonial filters. which are so deeply embedded into us that we start to see it as, we start to even doubt our own experience, and we tend to doubt our own emotionality and acceptance of coexistence. So we have to really reflect, come up with a self-reflective approach of what it is that we are finding it contradictory, or what it is we are finding it as barriers. Because experientially and emotionally, we don't see it so. If we have to really look at our larger context in which all these three themes can be subsumed, is to ask ourselves, who are we? What are the cultural heritage and spiritual heritage that we carry? And what is the meaning and purpose of all this? Because the spiritual heritage that we carry is so deep, because just recently, a colleague of mine from Flame called up and said, "Ma'am, do you know that our spiritual heritage is so great?" I said, "Yes, I know." And she said, "I've just discovered it." And she went almost overboard, going, praising it. "I discovered this, I discovered this, I learned this, I learned this." He says, "Ma'am, why haven't we been ever taught of all this?" So the part of the difficulty lies in the spirit, the 500 years of amnesia and the colonized mind does not permit it to take a look at what is our heritage and what is our belonging and what we did in the past. And it is seen as glorification of past, but I think it is real that we have a rich heritage of knowledge and wisdom, which we have completely disregarded and do not include it as part of our education system. And I have been fighting the education system, therefore created that we need to be contextually relevant. We need not be just beggars, borrowers, adapters, and adopters of a heritage which logically does not make sense to us, which emotionally does not make sense to us. But we seems to have messed up our education system. And in the name of whatever we have chosen to be, we have emerged as a secular culture, and therefore we don't teach the spiritual texts to our kids. And therefore, some of the problems which come up is because our minds work differently, and our minds are always caught in a dilemma. Every time we make a choice, which is emotional and experiential, we get caught with logic and rationality, and therefore we constantly are kind of oscillating in the dilemmas. And because we are an oral culture and not a written culture, not a word culture, all our texts have been, a lot of our text has been destroyed and kind of contaminated. And the interpretations which come are so logical and rational that sometimes it seems that our literature is full of anomalies which don't make sense. So people who don't understand, you have to be an Indian to understand the country. Even then you don't fully understand the complexity of the country, because unless you go into the layers and layers of cultural context of our history and of our civilization. Now, if we look at the trends, emerging trends, especially in the economies. Now, I was thinking, it's good to be in a management educational institution, and in IIMA, I have been exceedingly privileged to be there. But I was thinking whether IIMs or management institutions were the choices to be made by the government at a time when we were independent. Because, see, what is our cultural heritage is of being finance and trade, because we were good traders and also entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs in, I mean, just imagine the textile, the handicrafts, the brass, you name it anywhere. We were good in handicrafts. So we ought to have created institutions of entrepreneurs rather than institutions of management who created employees, and all those employees were created for multinational companies. And those who came to Indian companies found it difficult to adjust because the assumptions of each of these was very different. So it made me really think that we ought to have created institutions of entrepreneurs who would have then created many jobs, and our economies would have been lot better. Now, another thing is that recently I've been hearing in the media that our GDP worldwide was 49% of the world. So you can imagine the amount of wealth we had in our country. And now we seem to have become a third world country because of the kind of looting which was done, the kind of colonization which was done. Everybody else became richer based on our wealth. So economies need to be understood in the context. And when you look at these, the issues of the country, there are 7 issues which are blamed on India, which are very kind of, see, they do the drum beating of these 7 ills when they talk about India. Illiteracy, health, hygiene, casteism, superstition, and based on these 7, we are told we are at a, and you see the comparison gets done globally on criteria which don't belong to us, which are not our strengths, which is their strength. So we are bound to come 145th or 95th or 92nd in the hierarchy. It's quite sometimes painful to see that they are really not looking at a very fair, even in terms of educational rankings, institutional rankings, they do not consider what is uniquely ours. They only consider what is uniquely theirs and then compare us to them. So we are bound to come out negative, or we are bound to come out not even be in the 100. And in order to be in the top something, we have to be adapters, adopters, beggars and borrowers and adopt their culture to do it. And it does not make sense anyway, because then we lose our own identity and we lose our own unique aspects of our identity. So we need to really take a look at the economies. And emotionality and society, let us look at the spaces in our society. The spaces in our society are basically strengthened by the family. And we seem to have gone the way of the Western world in breaking up the families and not have bonded ties. But our family strength is the most unique strength for the children to grow. Because Indian children do not have few $100,000 of debts when they start their lives. Because families see it as a responsibility to provide them enough education so they can begin their life in a more decent living manner. Now, and we seem to, and if we look at media, they seem to be contaminating the family so badly. You see all the serials where they show the social issues in such an exaggerated manner that joint families is really not considered appropriate by any young woman. Many of the women I know in colleges and schools, they don't want to get married into a joint family. If they see a boy who lives in a joint family, they straight say, no, I don't want to get married. They don't even look at what are the positives, what are the strengths of the family. They don't even consider it. The mind is so filled with emotional issues, about negative emotional issues about the joint family. I'll tell you an example of a young girl who was in my student who refused to marry the boy for 2 years. Afterwards, the grandfather of the boy told the girl that you give me 1 year. After that, you can leave. I will buy you a house. I promise you that much. she got married and then she refused to leave because she found the joint family culture and the strengths of the family so good. And especially after her child was born, she just refused to move out. Her parents kept on saying, why don't you take a separate house? But she would not, because for the first time her experience was, and not her head, her experience was that there is some merit in the joint family which provides a lot of support. She feels so secure and safe working because her child is taken care of. Now, so we have to really, therefore, which brings me to the third theme, which is the um, which is continuity in the from the ancient to the contemporary to spirit, and honoring the ancient and the spiritual practices. That if you provide a space where young generation can experience some of the strengths of our culture, it would mean a lot of transformation in the young people and also give them a positive image of what was. Now, we are right now living with a colonized mindset of everything which is Indian is bad. And therefore, if you give the permission, the whole country would take an immigration to America or to any other Western countries. So the whole point is that the third thing which says continuity, but continuity, we need to consider that which are very positives of the culture and not, there are difficulties in the culture. There is a social baggage, but the social baggage has a reason to be there, has a reason because it has happened in such a way that since we have assimilated and accepted centuries of diverse cultures, there are bound to be difficulties and there are bound to be complexities and there are bound to be difficulties in transformations. So essentially what we have to do is to accept the positive aspects of the continuity and also make a choice of what is it that we would like to create and innovate, because the current educational system, that is that which we inherited from the colonials, was to make us into employees and clerical staffs and not necessarily innovators and creators. So we need to, current education policy is a good policy because it takes into account the cultural heritage, the contextual heritage, and also makes us feel proud of what India has done or can do and could do and will do. So looking into the future, I think we need to begin from the beginning, that is from the education system, and continue with the ancient practices, honor them, respect them, and be guided by them. And that would really help us to grow into a dynamic culture and a society of the country. Now, the themes, I once again bring it back to the cultural heritage of the themes. I think the themes identified by the summit are extremely important, very relevant for the times, because all of us are struggling with adversities and complexities of so many different kinds and from so many different parts of the globe, that somewhere we need to anchor ourselves and in the foundations of our culture, which promotes a certain kind of a lifestyle, which creates well-being, which promotes innovation, which promotes creativity, and makes an Indian feel proud of who they are and where they belong and what they have as a heritage from the ancestors. So once again, I thank all of you for listening to me. I am deeply honored and privileged to be invited, and I feel what Joy said, coming home. So it is like coming home. Thank you so much.